Oops. Hello and welcome everyone to the latest Loki Community Call. This is the one for July. Today we're going to be talking all about metric queries, and my name is Nicole van der Hoeven, and I'd like to introduce you to this guy over there.
Have I got the directions right this time? Or am I still pointing
No.
It
It's
looks
okay.
right on
Let's
my-
say yes.
Right. My name is Jay Clifford, and I'm Nicole's partner in crime as a developer advocate for Loki as well. And I know nothing about metrics queries, so I will be fully reading from the script this time.
Great. Today we've got down there Julie Stickler. Julie, welcome. She's our awesome technical docs writer, and she's been working on metric queries for the docs. So I'm sure she's going to be taking notes on everything that people ask. Ask your questions. This is a time if you were like, hey, why don't the docs cover this? This is the time to ask your questions because we also have our expert over there, Cyril. Cyril's been on a few times before. I think last time he was on to talk about log queries. And one of the things he said after that was, hey, we didn't even get to metric queries. And
Sure.
that sounded to me like he was asking for more work.
Yeah,
I'm
Cyril, did you not write like 8 blogs, like about 4 of them on metrics queries? Like I feel like we were looking up how many you did on LogQL.
Good question. Actually, I think I wrote a couple of them, not 10, but a couple of them. And I still think they quite are relevant to the topic, writing queries, metric queries. So yeah, good call out.
Awesome.
You should definitely check those out.
Yes, I will link them in the description below. I think I already have at least one linked down there. But first, before we get into metric queries, Jay, you had an announcement for us.
Yes. So last time Ed came on and talked about the push for Loki 4.0, plug for the last one. If you want to know about all the architectural changes and the assumptions we're making for 4.0, definitely check out that video call and then catch Ed out on anything he said in that and make sure you hold him to account. We love to be held for account on these community calls, unless he's put like a provisional.
Especially when it's not us.
Yeah. We obviously want to make sure that we keep up support for Loki as it currently stands. And one of the big things that you've been asking for is making sure that we keep our Helm up to date and solve Helm issues as we go. So we've been working with our Grafana champions, and we have formed a new group called the Loki Helm Maintainers. We're trialing it out for a little while. We're looking at sort of a scope of 3 months at the moment. And I will put on stage right now. So here is our 3 extremely worthy volunteers who have been fantastic so far. So we have Hans Christian, Jan Otto, and Mohammed. You might see them in the community answering questions on Loki already. They've been doing a stupendous amount of work trimming down our old PRs for Loki, the Loki Helm, and also making sure lots of these have been merged where they make sense as well. We're focusing primarily on merging PRs that have been contributed by the community at the moment. We're not really looking at issues as it currently stands. We just have so many to get through. But I wanted to give them a special announcement here because I think we've only had the group running for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, is that it, Julie? Wow.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks, and we've been picking off all the low-hanging fruit. So there's a bunch of PRs that have been closed because they're already solved, or they're duplicates, or they're so stale that it doesn't even make sense.
So I might have the numbers wrong here based upon when I copied them in. So Julie, you can correct me here. But yeah, so 46 PRs have been closed, and I think we're up to 9 maybe merged now. I need to check this.
I think we're up to 9 this morning.
Amazing. And then, yes, we still have quite a lot to go, but honestly, we'll keep working against it, chipping away. We're going to be looking at some test automations to make it easier to validate the Helm as well. So watch this space. Passing back to the actual topic at hand, Nicole, all about metrics queries.
All right. Awesome. I'm excited to talk about metric queries because we don't talk about them enough. And it seemed maybe we should talk a little bit about the theory of it. Cyril, could you talk us through what actually even is a metric query and how is it different from a log query?
Yeah. So a metric query, from logs, by the way. So it's always from logs themselves. Allows you to either have a sense of like the log volume over time for a given query, or also just like trying to extract data from the log itself and break down the data into a specific interesting column, for instance. And that's actually what the drill down does automatically for you. When you go around in the multiple tab there is on the drill down, you can see different type of breakdown, and they are all built using metric queries from Loki. Maybe I guess probably the first reason will be like if you need either a breakdown or a sense of the volume over time. But I think it could be interesting to talk about how those queries work in general, because they are very much different than querying logs, but they also are very similar than querying Prometheus range queries. So
Yeah.
there's definitely two type of queries you can do when you're writing a metric query in LogQL. It could be an instant query or a range query. The difference between the two is very simple. Is the instant query, let's say it's the base, it queries over a specific amount of time based on a given point, start time, or actually end time. And it looks backward depending on the amount of data you want to look at, and it just returns 1 point for that data set. The range queries is the same, except that there's a start and an end, and each point is an instant query. And it looks back based on a range interval, which we'll look after, and then there's the space between each of them is what we call the step. So it's the same step as in Prometheus. So I just wanted to talk about this. It's probably still very abstract, but we will dig into this as we are doing some queries.
So I guess this is me from my basic term here is like you would use an instant query, say in just like in a value visualization block or a gauge where you just have the the last value that you need from that calculation, versus like a range query where you would use say like a time graph or bar charts in order with a like time on the axis to work out the iteration.
Yeah, the instant query can return multiple points, but they are all from the same time. So multiple point, if there is like, if you, for instance, we could try this now. So I was looking at the service Grafana here. So interestingly, I discovered that today as you were talking, Jay, that if you removed everything, you have the magic step here is happening actually, which is a variable that allows you to decide what will be the step for that query, that metric query. I suspect it's going to show up again when we're going to build a metric query, but as you enter a log query, it just disappears. Anyway, let me show you. So if we do a count over time, Grafana tries to help me, so let me do it here. So I'm not going to talk about auto for now. Just going to show you if we do this one. All right, so this one shows there's only one pods basically running, and it's Usman one apparently. But we can break it down by, for instance, cluster, just to show you that there is already labels. Right, so there's already labels for that log selector, and one of them is cluster, and I can show the point over time of how many log line there is. So this is an hour, but we can go back to 6 hours. On that instance. If I switch it to an instant, now I only have one value. If I were to ask something else, let's say something that has multiple pods, which will be more interesting. So let's try to do that. I don't know if this one has one. No. So I can try to find maybe a cluster. Right, this one must have multiple one. No.
There might be another Loki data source in there that might have some more interesting. There we go.
Yeah, I have another data source after. If I'm not finding, I'll switch to it, by the way. But yeah, just showing you, this is an instance. So right now, so the stat actually is almost not useful, except that it's still there because we'll talk about this one here, the auto. But as you can see, this is an instant query and it returns a table. So you have one timestamp, but multiple values break down by service name, right? So in the last 6 hours, this is the amount of logs each of those service name have. And the biggest one is, for instance, the alloy Is it the alloy? Oh, sorry. The K6PHP service name. So that's the amount of log line there is. I could, combine with another search. I could combine with like errors, for instance, and so it gives me an idea of the volume at an instant for each of those service names. Any questions so far? All right, let's keep going then. So let's talk about the auto. What is how does query works? So as you can see, the middle here is a log pipeline. I think we call it like a log expression pipeline. So it targets a set of logs. It can filter them, can filter by label, but also by other properties of the log line. And we talked about this in the previous call. When you wrap this with a range vector, and you always have to use a range vector operation. When you wrap this with a range vector, and we'll discuss about all the possible range vector operation that exist, you also need to provide the interval, so the range of the range vector. So the range of the range vector means like for how many time back I should be computing that count. So because right now it's an instant query of 6 hours, and I use the auto, which basically pin the range to the same as the step. Again, step and range are not the same, but in that case, because I use the auto, it will automatically use the same step as the range. Then I end up with the last 6 hours of data.
So in terms of like, and this is where I get confused in terms of like the step or the aggregation amount. Is this basically, so let's say we were doing a range query, this is kind of like the bins that we're putting into. So like if we put a 5-minute bin rather than an auto there, we would aggregate in a range query, we'd run that aggregation against every 5 minutes within the range, or is that the different from the auto step there?
Yeah, in the case of a range query, if you do 1 minute and the step is like 15 minutes, then you're basically sampling. You're only looking at 1 minute for each range of 15 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why I'm talking about it. It's nice to be aware of it. Most of the time, you just use auto, so that you have the step and the range that is exactly the same.
Yeah. No, because it makes sense, because that's where I want to make sure that it's where we know where it's useful that you start manually defining those where it makes sense, rather than just using the inbuilt auto mode of Grafana. Because I think that's like I think I just rely on auto and then start changing like the actual parameters in Grafana versus like actually hard coding those. And I wondered where it'd be interesting to actually like hard code that parameter. I'm assuming it's probably when you don't want, if you change the range in Grafana, but you want the specific step to stay the same, you would just hard code it so that visualization was always static.
Yeah, it can be useful for visualization, but also for like alerts. Sometimes you want to set it to the same as the duration of the alert or things like that. Yeah, let's play with it. For instance, like instead of using the auto, which normally should set it to 6 hours, if I set it to 1 minute, we should see. So I think the influx one go down, obviously, because it's just 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even worse than that. Like most of them are gone now. In the last minute, the rest were not actually logging anything. So I'm looking at an instant query. The time is now, but I'm looking only 1 minute back. So that's what instant query are. If I'm doing a range, I can show you the difference between the two, because it kind of changed the sampling. So on 1 minute, it looks like this right now. So looks like 14 sample for the influx one. If I go back to auto, which I don't think it's actually going to be 6 hours this time, because it breaks down the 6 hour window into multiple steps. But we can play with it. The result is not exactly the same, as you can see. So this time I'm actually not missing a single log line. And it sounds like now I'm actually going over the less than 10 minutes. So I was doing more. So I think the amount of the current range, which I still don't know what it is right now. I don't know if there's any way. I think the query inspector can show us that. Yeah, the step was 20 seconds. So because before I was doing 1 minute, I was counting more than that exists in each step. I was counting like, part of a step even before. So I was including multiple step data into one point.
So I kind of think of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cyril. I'm just also trying to paraphrase and see if I understand correctly. I kind of think of instant vectors as a snapshot, like it's a single moment in time, but it's everything that was happening for that whatever you're measuring at that time. And then the range is more like a historical thing. It's everything over that interval. But I also think that more than that, it seems like the output of a range vector is actually raw logs. Is that correct? They're raw log lines. So technically, if it were just range vectors, it's not a metric query. They're used as input for for aggregation functions that
Yeah,
turn it into instant vectors, right?
right. Yes, and which is the count of logs.
Yeah. So
But
what we're seeing here, the graph, that's actually a graphical representation of the output of the range vector query, right? So it's not because the actual output is log lines, raw log lines.
yeah,
So range vectors are for log queries, and instant vectors are the outputs of metric queries.
yeah. Uh,
Okay, great.
by, by the way, I can show you also something that is interesting. So found this blog post here, which is in Japanese apparently, and it explained a bit what is this range vector window. So every timestamp, as you can see, is like 5 minutes more. And if your range window, so that the resolution is 5 minutes, but if your range function is 15 minutes, you can see that you're actually aggregating logs that are for multiple steps. And the auto just set the two together as the same. The resolution step and the range vector window are the same. Hopefully that helps understand a bit the difference between the two.
Can we maybe step back a little bit here? There have been a few questions on recording rules that I'd like to get to,
Okay.
but maybe we can also talk about like why would we want to turn logs into metrics instead of just capturing metrics themselves? Like Prometheus, I know does a pre-aggregation of metrics. Why would we not do that rather than getting logs through Loki and then turning them into metrics?
Yeah, so there's definitively ways to um, generate metrics from logs without ingesting the logs or from the collection automatically. And I think you should do that if you are 100% sure you're going to use that metric. The reason why will still be interesting is that there's sometimes cases where you didn't know in advance you will want to do that query, which is trying to figure it out the unknown. So when you're doing an incident, you find something interesting in the logs and you want to see the trend of what you found over time. It could be an error, it could be a panic. You cannot really foresee in advance that this keyword is going to show up during the incident. So that's when you want to maybe use the metric query to see over time how does that trend, if it's like 1,000 of log line per second or if it's 15,000. With using just log, it's difficult to see, but using a metric query, you can see larger time range and the trend over time. So that's one example. There's other example where you may have, for instance, an Nginx server and you don't have access to change the collection to start collecting metric from it, or it's just not possible to do that. Like it's not instrumented at all. And you wanna use the logs themselves for monitoring the Nginx server. So like the latency or the request rate per status code or region, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So, and this is a Prometheus question, so I don't know if you can answer, but um, I know that Prometheus does pre-aggregation of the metrics, but does that happen at ingest?
Does Prometheus aggregate? I don't think it does necessarily aggregate metric. Why do you think it does aggregate metric?
I maybe I'm mistaken, but I was pretty sure that it did do some pre-aggregation. But anyway, the question that I was interested in was one from Rock Darko here, and I
Yeah.
will get to the recording rules questions by the way, people in chat. But I just this one was more topical. Can Loki generate metrics at ingest time rather than by doing periodical querying? And if so, what is better to use between Loki and the OTel collector to get that done? I believe the answer is no, right? Loki keeps logs. It doesn't generate or store metrics. The metrics are calculated at query time. Is that correct, Cyril?
Yeah, that's correct. We are thinking about collecting some I think metrics in the future, like using the new format in V4. But right now metrics are only computed at query time. But if you do want to do that, I think allows allow you to create like Prometheus style metrics from the collector directly. So it kind of is at ingest time. And I will suspect that the hotel collector does that too, or has the option of computing metrics from logs. But if you
Okay.
need, yeah, the answer is like if you need to do that, the using a collector or whatever you use to collect the data is the good answer. Like Loki doesn't do that.
So I just wanted to check that a little bit though. So we I mean there is some form of aggregation that we do in a way. I don't it obviously happens in the background because we use it for drill down logs, right? It's like so with the pattern ingesters, we actually do some metric aggregation, like
Oh,
that's a setting within the Loki config. But I know it's only for specific parts of like, sort of volume or like look when we actually look at patterns, we then give specific points. But I like that might be me misreading how we use the Loki configuration. But we enable it by default now. It's like pattern ingesters enabled by true and metrics aggregation. And then we kind of like write those to Loki. Oh, sorry, so we don't write them to Loki, but the target for the metrics aggregation is Loki.
yeah, if I can find some, but yeah, you're right. We do have this stored now, but they are only for the pattern. Yeah, here we
Only for
go.
the pattern. So
Yeah,
and so the pattern is only like where so basically at ingest when we see a specific we discussed this in the last log query but basically when you see a specific pattern we aggregate those so you can see this specific count of how many times that pattern showed up in your log lines.
yeah, that's correct. And we do store them as aggregation. Yeah. That's the only case. And they are not available via Explore and LogQL. So you can only have access to that either via the API or using the drill down pattern page.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it looks like Prometheus it doesn't do rollups, but it does pre-aggregate by metric name and labels, and it does it before ingest. It does it in the exporter itself.
I see.
So it's very different from Loki because Loki does it only at query, except for the pattern. Can we talk a little bit about the recording rules as well, and how does that figure into metric queries?
Yeah, I mean, pretty sure that alerts, in Grafana can only be done using metrics. So it's definitely a good use case to turn logs at query time into metrics because then you can start alerting on error rate, for instance, or bad words happening. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good use case, and I think the Grafana Manager Lab allows you to set up either a Prometheus or a Loki data source, and then you have to write a metric query for the logs.
We have a question here from Quantum Q80. Loki recording rules don't output anything if the range is 1 minute. Could you talk more about Loki recording rules and about sending them to Prometheus as metrics?
Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily exactly for that reason why it's not working, but I will just try to increase the range to see if it is related to the range. But if you have an interval that is different than the range itself, I don't know if we can see it here in the alert. Let me see.
I'm wondering if this because I think this came up when I was doing like the Helm meta monitoring. So I definitely think it is something to do with like the amount of points, the step being returned.
Yeah, we ran into this together too, right? I think it might not be the time, it might be the number of data points because I believe they're batched.
Yeah. So I don't know if I can change this one, but this one is definitively an example where you're looking at just 1 minute over 20 minutes. So you might be missing points for sure. I understand that's kind of confusing, but you want to have the range here to be the same as your duration of the alert. Otherwise, you can be missing some data. Don't know if I have. Oh, that's not this one. Let me see. Maybe you should create a new one, which I don't know if I can do that here. I don't think I have the right to do that. I need signing.
Well, I would suggest for Quantum Q80, one thing you could do is increase the range. So try like 5 minutes or something, but also decrease the evaluation interval. So maybe the issue is that it needs to run more frequently. The evaluation needs to run more frequently. Maybe it's not finding anything within that minute.
Yeah.
And then maybe an offset would be good to give logs time to arrive. Maybe the logs that you're expecting have just not arrived yet.
And if you need some examples, I definitely recommend looking into the Loki mix-ins, because we actually have a bunch of recording rules there that we use to support the Loki mix-ins, which run on 1 minute intervals. So you can definitely check those and check them against what you're trying to run and see where things might be going wrong.
Yeah. The golden rule is to make sure that you cover with your range of aggregation the same amount of data as the evaluation period. So if it's 1 minute, you want to cover 1 minute of data, or you might be missing data.
Suleiman Kutlu has another recording rule related question. We have a recording rule for one of our apps, and when there's no log records for the interval, we don't get metric data point with a value of 0. So they are getting a metric data point with a value of 0. How can we get 0 if there's no data?
I think you can do that with the vector operation. Actually, we can try it. Let me see. Can we try the same? So I think this one's going to help us. Right. Let's see. So I think all and then vector 0. Yeah, so that does add probably the missing point. So something like that should probably help you. So adding the all vector 0 to fill the missing point. Obviously, I should be summing this one to see all of them as a single one. But yeah, now we have the 0 point.
Oh, that's really cool. I did not know you could do that.
And then if you don't, I don't have the 0 point.
Dang. Wow.
So that could be a way of solving that, making sure you always have a value, at least 0 value.
Well, poor Suleiman just had to go on call. So Godspeed, but hopefully he catches that in the recording and he can add that to his alerting rules, because that is really cool.
Yeah, it's not on by default, because 0 is not necessarily always the value that you want. In case 0 could means actual 0 and not value missing. So this is why it's not really the default.
Oh, that's
It's
true.
also important that it's a vector, right? It will add 0 to every data point that doesn't, well, if it doesn't exist, right? Other than just like having a flat constant 0 value.
Yeah, I guess if you do an AND, you're gonna get probably just 0. Oh no, actually no. So probably adds 0 if both are 0 or something like this. I don't know. I guess, yeah.
Okay, another comment from Andre Ziviani. I would love a way to generate metrics from logs that have a delay to be received, like the AWS ALB. If I use offset, then the metric time does not correspond to the actual event.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know if we have an answer for that. Honestly, we will need to ask the alerting team if there is a way to include in the alert the original time.
Is
I
it
understand
something that maybe could be done with like on the visualization side, like as a transformation?
Could be, yeah.
So I guess that's also a question that I have. When would you use a metric query within Loki, so using a query to generate a metric in Loki, and when would you use a transformation in Grafana?
I honestly always use like Loki as much as possible, because that's what I know more than transformation themselves. But I think transformation are basically the case of like transforming the result, and the query language capabilities is not there, so it allows you to overcome this, and it has been done in a way that you can apply to the data frame format, so not just Loki. So yeah, I think it depends. I don't think there's a golden rule. So it's more like if the language doesn't allow you to do exactly what you want, then using a transformation is probably the right way of doing it.
Yeah, and I think if you do a transformation, that will only apply to the dashboard, and you can't then run an alert on that, right? So that would still be a good case for doing it through Loki.
Yes, you can use the Grafana alerts, yeah, on top of that.
Okay.
I think this is like a interesting thing. I don't know if we get to this later, Nicole, about sort of performance considerations and
Go for
the
it.
workloads expenses, but I think this is a good one from. I apologize. Like Nicole, would you?
Jiri Rolicek.
Jiri. So he struggles with the cost of metrics from ephemeral workloads at CE runners. What would it make sense to save a metric CPU as log lines and then query them? Should he be doing these as recording rules and pushing these to Prometheus and saving the expense that way rather than running constant LogQL metrics queries over the top?
Yeah, I guess that's not like the problem that we're talking about. Is more like I have too many runners, and then running a large queries, and it's not Loki but Prometheus queries, I guess, is causing problems. I think the right way to solve that is probably remove some labels that are not really required. So aggregating those runners together. So find a way to aggregate one of the labels that are causing many runners to appear to be different.
Could we move that into structured metadata, or would that compromise the metric query?
I mean, I think I don't know, it depends on the limit, like how much can you query, depends on the query itself. For the structure metadata, I guess they are helping for avoiding to do parsing, but that's pretty much it. So it's not going to solve the high cardinality problem, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe this isn't exactly the answer that Yuri was looking for, but since he specifically mentioned CPU, I would look into Pyroscope because it's optimized just for that.
Yeah, and also Prometheus for sure.
So I actually have a question. How do metric queries actually, like what's going on under the hood? So Loki isn't storing them. Are they getting sent somewhere else? Where are those numbers stored?
Actually, only for cache purpose, we are writing some of the data in our infrastructure, but otherwise, nothing is really stored. So obviously, if you're asking like a 6 hour of data and then you're asking 12 hour, the first 6 hours is going to get cached and not queried again. But other than that, we don't necessarily store that data to be reused after. So it's just caching.
Okay. Maybe we can show them a demo of what you can do with metric queries.
Yeah. So I think we haven't dig too much on like more complex queries than like the count over time, but obviously the documentation has all this information. One thing that we haven't touched on yet, and I'll show you a dashboard to showcase this, is that right now it's all about counting the amount of volume that you have, but also like byte per second in terms of size of the log line. But you can also extract directly data, like if it's an Nginx server, you can extract the status code and then rate per status code. Or if there's a latency, you can write a query that builds a quantile over time or an average latency. And we have a dashboard on the play.grafana.org that showcase this. So this dashboard here is from an Nginx server. So the Nginx server output in JSON, but you should be able to use the same technique, whether it's in JSON or plain Nginx format. And this whole dashboard here is only built on top of log queries, well, metrics on logs. So we can maybe look at a couple of them. So the total request doesn't necessarily need to, so we don't necessarily need here to basically parse the data. So it's a very simple count over time. Actually, we have a count per sum by os, but it sounds to be aggregated entirely here. All right, so that was a simple one. Now, if we look at, so this is just showing the logs. So it's kind of nice if you want to see the recent request. So this is a log panel. So it's not a log query, but it's nice to show you that you can also reformat the log line to show exactly what you want to show on the panel. So this line normally is like much more awful to look like. Let's see. Yeah, so it's like terrible to look at this in a dashboard, but the line format allows you to make it a bit nicer for consuming on your dashboard. And then those here are the most interesting one, I guess, because they are metrics from this Nginx server without having metrics, but just using the logs themselves. So we can look at what is happening here. So this is a count over time, and you can see that it's summing by status, but status is not a label that exists. I actually don't suggest you to have that label, but it's coming from the fact that we have this JSON parser here, which extracts from the log line all the JSON values, and one of them is the status.
So I guess sort of like under the hood, this is like the order of execution. It's like we're performing the standard LogQL query underneath. We're extracting that information, and then we've wrapped in the metrics queries, so we have access to all of those extracted attributes afterwards. Right. So I guess what you showed last time, the ability to parse your log body into different, that you could reformat it, you could reshape and extract values. So that could be an interesting way of you could reshape your log structure completely and then run a metrics query over that log shape. It would be an expensive query, but it gives you the option of having some more interesting metrics on very ugly log lines.
Yeah, that's right. It will be more expensive than just using the parser, definitively. And one of the most expensive operation is definitively rewriting the log line. So that's why usually you rewrite the log line just for log queries, because log queries just return a limited amount of a result. And range queries on metric basically go over each log line in the range. So it is going to be expensive for sure. You can, in the same kind of idea, you can run multiple parser. By the way, if you're not especially sure, you can do JSON and log format together. But again, it's not super efficient to do that.
I guess that kind of brings us into one of our community questions we released beforehand, and I'm just going to copy it in, Nicole. Here we go, and then hopefully I can show it. It's posting. So he said, "Hey Nicole, it would be great to have some advice on running metrics queries on tens of terabytes of logs. I'm aware that the current Loki architecture is designed for such a use case. That's where Loki 4.0 is coming. But is there any performance areas in performance that we could look at or tips to improve?" And I think this is kind of highlighting what you're saying in terms of like we look through every log line and we iterate through those in order to generate the metrics. So is there anything that we can do? Is it based like having better label selectors? Is it, how do we sort of, or is it, basically just increasing capacity? Because we do these types of queries at scale for some of our larger customers. So how are we currently trying to tackle this with the current architecture of Loki?
Yeah, so most of those, like the metric query that we've seen, like the simple one that we've seen so far, are actually the same one that I used to show you, the histogram on the Explorer. And those work for like terabyte of data for one of the, for some of our largest customer for sure. And the reason why is first, they are like a bit simpler usually. So they are like just count over time of the data. They don't do processing. And they also are streamed. So there's a streaming algorithm running in Explorer that queries a bit of data and then slowly show the data. So there's like some tools that we have in Grafana to make it feel like it is executing a lot, and you don't have to wait for a very long period without having result. But ultimately, it's all about making sure you write an efficient query. So I will say most of the time, make sure you just filter out as much data as you want to graph. So if it's an error all the time, make sure to pinpoint well that error with a equality operator in your pipeline to filter down the data, and then run the metric query on that. And even though if you have like terabyte of data, and if you're well deployed, you should be able to handle that.
Okay, the same person actually had another question that also relates to the performance impact. So Avanish Vagela, who is by the way one of our Grafana champions, asks, it would be good to know what kind of performance impact does structured metadata and different parsers have on the metrics queries.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about this one because I don't know on top of my head. I'm trying to think about how the structured metadata are executing. I think you can. So the structured metadata is nice because you can avoid the parser, but it's not always faster because some structured metadata operation, like equality, for instance, are not as fast as the pipe equal operator. So there's some case if it's like pure parsing. Basically, you want to do a breakdown of log line per stages code, and the log line that you have are HTTP codes, contain HTTP codes. I think it makes sense to use structured metadata there so that you can break it down. If you wanted to just filter out, just the 500, it will be better to use equality operator in your without using the actual structured metadata. It will run faster. So there's subtle like improvement, but it's not unfortunately solving like all the use case. And this is why the team is still working on like a V4 where there will be a truly columnar storage format.
So that's interesting. So yeah, I kind of understand then. So it's kind of like if we just do the pipe equal operator, we're just basically searching for that key value in the bytes that we have of that log line versus checking the structured metadata store of saying, okay, does that log line have that specific pass? But it does benefit us if we start adding log MFT or JSON to the pipeline, because we have to then unpack the log line and bring out those attributes, and then you're going to do the metrics query over the top. So it's like that's where we see the benefit of structured metadata come into play.
Yeah, definitively.
Gotcha.
Sven also has a question. Are there any Grafana apps that can help me with querying data from Loki without writing metric queries manually? And one of our champions, Andre, has already answered. Have you checked logs Drilldown in Grafana? Isn't it great?
I cannot believe Sven is watching this. But yeah, I can show you a Drilldown very, very quickly. So the Drilldown app is a bit different than Explore, where you have, thank you, Andre, where you have like a queryless experience. So you don't necessarily need to be an expert in LogQL or PromQL to be able to get started. And you never have like an empty page. So the beginning of the page is showing you all the services that are available and some sample of the log line, and you can start drilling down from there. So I selected a service, but I can swap, can change the different label. I can search log line, but I can also see breakdown. So those are actually metric queries from LogQL that are generated automatically by the app without you needing to do that. And it shows you the breakdown per different level. And this is a JSON. So this was a JSON. And so we have a field here where it's automatically using the JSON parser to show you some of those breakdown per the JSON value. And that can be interesting if you're looking for spikes on specific properties. And then the pattern one is the last one. So all of this is like without any LogQL, but you can still do a bit like almost the same feature. So if you're looking for error, for instance, you can have the error added here. And if you want to only select, for instance, let's say this one here, so we can include that, and it automatically, so it's all clicks. And if you want to go further, you can always, I think it's, let me see, it's in this one, Explore. can always go and then see the query that you built.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was not for the log, but this is the log one. So you can go to Explore and see the query that we built together with this app.
Very, very cool.
It's a nice way to get started, learn about the language without having to learn from the start.
Yeah, I really love it. Like if I get it in logs Drilldown, why would I write actual queries when it's already there? But I also, one of the reasons why I wanted to show that Grafana Play dashboard is because I still go to that. Like when I was learning, I mean, I'm still learning, but because it has so many different ways to turn logs into metrics, anyone without an account can go there, hit edit, and then you can just see exactly what the query is, and then you just change it to have the variables that you have, and it's a lot easier so that you're not starting from nothing. You're just like copying and modifying slightly.
Yeah, definitely. And one
Andre
advice,
also, oh sorry, go on.
I was about to say, one advice I will give to anyone trying to write a query, a metric query from the start, is to always query for the log first. So you always want to see the structure, like how the logs are, before being able to use the right parser or aggregate on the right column. Unfortunately, you need to build from the log expression first, and then once you're happy, you start doing metric query.
So in honor of Andrea, who's just left us, and I have a lot of questions about this because I have no idea how to use Unwrap. So I guess we kind of had it in our script for this one as well. So could you take us a little bit around what Unwrap is used for? How do we sort of like unwrap a metrics query? And then actually, if we can drill into Andrea's request here around his use case on Unwrap, that would be awesome.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about, so I think the Nginx dashboard has some unwrap, but I think I can maybe use something a bit more interesting. Let's see. All right, so I have this thing here.
So I guess while you're doing that quick fire question, is Unwrap only used for aggregation queries or like a metrics queries? This is me. I have no idea because I've not used Unwrap.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the way so what I know about it, again, chime in, Cyril, if I'm saying something wrong, but the way that I understand it is like, how we were saying that the output of a metrics query is usually a vector. So it's like, it's not a single number. It can be multiple numbers, but it also is paired with, like, it has key value pairs, it has a timestamp. So it's not just one number, it's like it's multiple things. When you unwrap something, that means that the result is a single scalar value, a single number based on the entire time period.
Yeah. So the unwrap is trying to get a number from the log line and use it inside as the base for the sample for the aggregation that's going to happen.
Okay. So is this where they're sort of like setting about sort of like the dynamic unit here? It's like they're basically trying to like extract a value that in this case, what was their value is the size field, which is 100 megabytes. And they're trying to use that as a scalar or a number in the actual calculation.
Yeah, that's right. So so far the only queries that I wrote was like count over time, which is just counting the amount of log line matching. When you start using Unwrap, you can do other operation like average over time, quantile over time. You can do much more, different operations that are on scalar. And I can show you those. So those one here are those log line here. They contain like numbers. So we have like, I know it's very small, but let me see. I'll try to remove this. So some of them have like duration, for instance, or let me see. You have, so this is a duration. You have the amount of return line, and we can use those to aggregate over, not just on the line, like the fact that the line exists or not. That's the idea of the unwrap. So we could try, for instance, like those are like queries that are made against the cluster. We could try to unwrap, for instance, the total entry for each of them and do. So we could do a max over time on the total entry to see which one has the max total entry, or like how the max total entry graph over time. So I'll show you how usually I go about this. So I usually target the log line that I want. This one has like metric.go, but it could be something else depending on what you're looking for. Again, this is like best practice. Try to always filter out things that you don't want in your metric queries. And then here we want to do a log format, so we can grab all those log format values. So it's like parsing JSON, but this time this is for log format. So when I do that now, I can see that this P here, which says parsed. So this comes from the actual log line, and those are values I can use in aggregation or unwrap if they are an integer value or a number.
With Andre's question in mind, can we do like the? I think there was a total bytes something there.
We can do the bytes one, yeah. I just need to find a byte. So far we have only duration, but yeah, there's a total byte. All right, so we have a throughput here. So we could do the average or the quantile. Let's do a quantile. So what's the P99 throughput for queries here? So let's do that.
This is already blowing my mind. Did not know we could do this. So this is cool.
So you need to unwrap, and then because this is the total byte, you need to say bytes, I think. So unwrap can have functions. So this one is a byte to convert a byte into bytes, like a byte as in this format here. So I'm going to use the throughput here. And I need to do quantile over time. So let's just remove all of this. And then add the auto. And we're going to give a by empty for now. So it's over, so not necessarily over a pod or an infrastructure label, just over all of them. And that should already do it. So it's going to take this throughput value, which is in megabyte, or sometimes it's not in megabyte. I guess it could be in bytes. Transform it into a float value and use that vector to create a quantile over time. So for the quantile, I actually need value for the.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use this P99. All right, so let's run that query. All right, so that works, which is what's a bit annoying is that we can see that the units are not like, there's no way to set units, I think, in Explore. So in a dashboard, I could use that in the dashboard and show you, the maximum throughput. So it's like 12 billion. I suspect it's 9, so it's like 12 terabytes.
And this is saying that this is the 99th percentile throughput, right?
It's only 1%. So it's only 1% of the queries that are considered. Yeah.
That go above that number. But Andre was asking specifically for the bytes, is there a way to convert the unit of the field so that it dynamically displays like megabytes or gigabytes or something, or bytes?
So for the unwrap, that's how you do it. If you need to display directly, I mean, this one wasn't. Let me see.
But is there like a dynamic unit that we can have, like a measure, a unit of measure?
This was the unit, by the way. You can see. If I don't do that, it's going to fail. So it's transforming it's failing because it doesn't have.
Andre has left, but I think what he's looking for is like for it to output 100 megabytes as an MB if it needs to.
Yeah, that is like what I just showed here was just a problem with Explore. But
okay, because we're not seeing it because it's not on a dashboard.
Yeah, it's not a dashboard, but once I
I see.
Once I run that query, there's units somewhere.
You can convert from there.
Yeah. Where's units?
If there's a little search bar at the top, if you just want to try that for it to at the top of this, that's the little search icon.
Yeah.
And that should give you the just to see where you got time series. And if you do the little search, I think that will give you, and you can just start typing units in.
Yeah, I cannot search it. I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
Next to the time series down.
Oh.
No, sorry. Yeah. There you go.
Yay. Yeah, this one is megabyte, so I don't know. I think it's bytes.
This is really cool, though. I think this has given me ample amount of possibilities in extracting numerical values from log lines.
Yeah, so this is doing the quantile at a time of the throughput, but we could have played with like latency. I think there's a duration too in there. Yeah, there is a duration. So you do need to add duration, I think here, or duration second. We'll convert the label value from Go duration format. So I think that's the one. And this is showing duration this time. So I think it's in seconds. There we go. Yeah. So that's and you can see they are actually matching, like the time it took for the throughput are matching the two queries. Obviously, large queries are executing for longer
Okay.
time. That's why.
Cool. So it is possible.
So it is possible, yeah, to use so if you use a graph, you need to look at the
Yeah.
documentation of LogQL. There's like a couple of functions here that are supported. But then after, when you're building a dashboard, it's up to you to know what's the unit. In the case of those functions, they have a special unit, definitively. So duration second is in second, and bytes is in bytes.
So
Okay,
I've got a question.
Well, go on, Julie.
This all seems terribly, terribly complicated. We've recently built logs Drilldown to make it easier to get into the logs. Are we building anything to make it easier to do metrics queries?
Um,
I'm handing you your segue here.
yeah, I mean, kind of like we were looking at it. So some of those. So if I show you some of those here, if I take this.
No,
one.
she's giving you like a perfect in to talk about your baby project.
Oh yeah, we can talk about that. Yes.
So we're getting
It's
to the end of
okay,
the hour.
Julie. I understood you.
Yeah, let's talk about the assistant. I wanted to use it to fix this unit thing, but I couldn't really save that.
Yeah, I'm hoping the Grafana Assistant will make me as good as Cyril and metrics queries, so I don't have that same look on my face that Rock said I had.
For anyone else that missed my segue there, Cyril is working on a project that we decided to talk about at the end of the hour, and it's the end of the hour. So
yeah.
All right, yeah. Let me show you how you can use the assistant, which is a cloud feature we have now to query your logs. So what's interesting is that everything that I said is kind of built in, like what you should be doing and the best practice. So you can ask, for instance, do we have logs that contain metrics that go in the Loki? So you can use just natural language. And it's going to go and try to find if I have a log line like this. I could have asked, Entropic is overloaded, so I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. Sounds like they have an outage.
Oh no!
Classic demo cards, all good.
Demos.
Yeah. Let's see. Sometimes it's just like temporary. So let's see. It's like Entropic API is really under pressure these days.
Well, we actually have another question. Maybe while we're waiting, Andre said that it would be nice to talk a bit about the ruler evaluation mode for local and remote.
So I don't necessarily know about the difference between the two. That's a good question.
So this is from what I understand, this is like the difference between like the ruler sending, basically the ruler evaluating itself versus sending it to a querier, or the inverse of that. There was basically, this is where I always get lost between which way local and remote is, but you basically, it's either the ruler evaluates it itself, or it sends off, asks one of the queries to do it, and then brings back the result. I don't know.
So I think that what Andre's asking is, with metric queries in particular, is it better to set the ruler evaluation mode to local or to remote?
I'm looking at what is the difference between the two.
So I think if it's local, then the ruler executes the query itself. And if it's remote, then it delegates a query evaluation to the querier API.
Yeah, so I think the answer is remote is better. Is that a question or just?
It's a question, but I think you're right. That's how I understood it too, that the remote mode would be better. Because if you do it locally, then each ruler instance does the work independently. There's
Yeah.
no shared query cache, and it doesn't use the query front end optimizations.
Right. Yeah. So the query frontend has a lot of optimization, like splitting queries into smaller subset and execute them in parallel. And like you said, like caching. There's query sharding. So there's a lot of like query acceleration technique in the query frontend. And if you use the local execution mode from the ruler accesses the data directly from the binary. So it doesn't use the query frontend and doesn't get access to those accelerations. So I think the remote has been added after so that it will be more efficient and also easier to scale because you only have to
Mm.
scale the query front end and something. It's much easier than the ruler themselves.
Okay, let's go jump back to your demo, which I think is working now magically.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know how long it's gonna work. But just to show you, I just asked about do we have this logs, and it just did the query for me, which was obviously a very simple query. But it does have a sense now because I did that query. The assistant has a kind of like a sense of what that log line is, and we can ask maybe more natural question. For instance, like what's the latency per was it tenant? I think we have tenant on that, or org maybe. Org. It's the latency per org. Um, so the assistant knows how to do those queries, and he has the context now of the log line, so it's just going to generate those complex unwrap query for me, and hopefully without
And then
making a mistake.
I'm assuming like we can take this even further and ask like once it's generated that to put it into a dashboard or a certain visualization.
What was the question? Sorry, Jay.
So that I'm assuming we can take this even a step further rather than just replying or regurgitating the metrics in the chat to us. We can ask it to implement that metrics query in a dashboard or a visualization.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's very cool.
yeah, and we can go to explore at any time. So if I like that query, I don't really like it, but if I like that query, I can go and explore and see what it did. So he basically reformatted the query. So I don't think he understood my question. So I'm going to wait a bit, see if it does it. Yeah, this time it does it nicely. Right.
Oh, that's wicked.
So it just did this one. So this one is a bit tough to load because I think there's a lot of data. So let me just pin it down to less, like half an hour. So it just did this query, which is valid, by the way. And it's going to show the average per organization. All right, so it's not showing up, but it did get the result. I will do it differently, by the way. So the assistant did it like this, but I will do it like this, which I think is more efficient.
don't say this, Cyril, or we're just gonna have to put you on a 24/7 call rewriting LogQL metrics queries.
Well,
Yeah, introducing Grafana Assistant. His name's Cyril.
yeah, it's struggling a bit because I think there's like a lot of data in that stream. Like, yeah, there's a lot of them. Well, there's one of them is causing trouble, and it's myself and the latency because I'm playing with Loki itself. But yeah, you can use the assistant. You can see the data. You can build dashboard with it. I think it's a nice way to learn also LogQL and just use natural language to create those complex queries.
Very cool. I mean,
Okay, we do have one more kind of niche question. So I don't know if we can really answer this, but I might as well ask. There's one from a champion, and it's compare one of our Grafana champions, Wilfried Rosette. So he says, I'm quite interested about rate and LogQL and whether or not they have the same unexpected behavior as it does in PromQL due to extrapolation. And then he links to some issues with in the Prometheus repo. I had a look at this. I didn't know about this until he brought it up. Um, but from what I understand is there is an issue with Prometheus and how it extrapolates. Like if it doesn't have on the edges of a range interval, if it doesn't have values there, it tries to extrapolate those values, which can make it not exactly accurate because it's guessing, it's estimating. So his question is, does Loki suffer from that as well?
I don't think it does, but it's even more complex with Loki because there's multiple rate. There's like the rate of logs, like how many log line there is, but there's also the rate of an unwrap value. So it starts to be a bit more complex. So let me show you, for instance. So if we do the rate of that one, and we remove the unwrap, it's the rate of log line. So if I don't remove all of this, and I need a sum, so let's do a sum.
I'm going to give like Wilfred the title of chief question asker because he is like on point with questions.
I think I'm going to say like it doesn't have the same problem because it's not the same data model, but at the same time it's not less confusing. So let me show you why it can be confusing. So this rate here, because it doesn't have any unwrap, is just the rate of logs over time. So there is like, if we zoom in here, there's 250 logs at that, per second. That's the rate. If we look at the count, it's another. So 200 per second. Normally, you should multiply by 60-second count over time. There's only 5. Right. So rate is I guess is a bit it's a bit different here because it counts the number of log line over time. But you can also do rate on unwrap value, and then you have another one which is like rate counter. So let's try the other one. So I'm gonna just open another one. I like to do this. Open 2 visualization like this, so I can see the log line when I'm building the query. All right. So now I can see the log line, and we could do a rate of one of those value here. So I can unwrap those value and do a rate on it, and that's a different rate. And that one is going to be the sum of all value divided by the time. So we could do the return line. Let's do this one. So we do unwrap return line. So bring back this sum rate. All right. As you can see, it is different. So it's definitively not the same. So let's just do an hour. Might be a bit too much an hour. So I'm going to hide the other one. So as you can see, that it is not the same. It's counting the rate of return line. It's not counting the rate of logs that happen. And then there's another one, which is like the rate counter. And this one does the extrapolation.
Mm.
And it's not technically going to be exactly the same result if it's not a counter. And I don't think this one is a counter. It just returns line. So it's probably going to struggle. And so this one does the extrapolation. This one probably has the same issue as Prometheus. So it shows 0 here, as you can see, because it's not actually a counter. So it's same thing, and you have to force yourself into using it if you want to use it. So this is for extrapolation of unwrap value. Without it, it's like rate of the value, and then the normal rate without unwrap is the rate of logline. Hopefully that is less confusing then.
Okay. Yeah, so I also think that the difference is pretty key. That in Prometheus, they are using it is the counter is being used, and in Loki it isn't. We're counting log lines, actual log lines. So there's no need for extrapolation because it's just what were the log lines, and then what was the time period, and then that's it. So I don't think that Loki suffers from the same issue.
No, there's no scrape interval too, which affects this problem here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, glad to have answered that these questions. Thank you so much for coming on. I know we're a little bit over, but we did get to see Grafana Assistant, and it does look like it's going to help us vibe code our way through metric queries and LogQL as well, hopefully, very
Right.
soon.
I would
You
like to. Oh, sorry. And I would like to thank you all for this metrics query crash course, because I knew nothing before this video, and now I feel dangerous. So this feels good.
Oh no, I
can,
don't know if that was the intended consequence.
you can go and make a dashboard, like Ward did on the playgrafana.com. As good as Ward now, Jay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, if there's anybody that's watching this back, there was so much that we could have gotten into and that we didn't get to cover. Why don't you leave your question in the comments down below, and then I will try and get them answered. And since we have our awesome docs writer here, and we can all also update docs, we'll make sure that the most common questions are answered in the documentation, so they don't get asked again.
Yeah, and the assistant use the docs now. So if you have a question, you can use the assistant and automatically ask the doc for you using intent. So you can ask it about LogQL definitively.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Cyril, for joining, and you too, Jay and Julie, for being here and asking the questions, and the community too. We got some pretty good questions in this
Amazing
one.
questions.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you later.
Bye.